How can nonfiction writers use the three-act structure to help outline your book? Well, let's discuss it in this video. Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm a book coach and developmental editor helping women writers unapologetically own their story to become a published author. So I do have another video where I break down the full three-act structure for fiction, but what I wanted to do, because this came up recently when I was coaching a client, is thinking about how we can use that structure to also help us outline our nonfiction book. So the three-act structure dates very far back to Aristotle. He was one of the first people to create this structure. William Shakespeare has also adapted this for all of his plays. When you start to understand what it is, you start to see it reflected in a lot of books and a lot of movies. So let's quickly break down what the three-act structure is, and then I'll talk about how this can apply to your nonfiction book. So the three-act structure has 3 acts within it, which serve as the middle, beginning, and end of your book. So Act 1 is the setup. This is where we often see the character's day-to-day life as it's been existing up until the story starts. This is where we're understanding what their routines are like, what their day-to-day life is like. And then something happens that kind of shakes up that world a little bit. And then this starts to put into motion a lot of rising action. So we're starting to really understand what the main conflict of the story is. And we're seeing that this character is motivated either to get the life they had, or they're starting to realize that in order to get what they want over there, they might have to change. And we're really understanding who this character is and potentially what they're going to be facing. So that's when we then move into Act 2. So Act 2 is to focus a lot more on the confrontation and the development of the story and the plot. This is very much so the meat of the book, and this is usually about 50% of the words that are in the book or the novel is where they are focused in this Act 2. So this is where the main character goes through a point of no return, so they cannot just say, screw it, I'm not going to deal with this and go back to their old lives. This is where the stakes are continuing to get complicated, they're facing more obstacles, and then there becomes this point where they have this revolution, where they realize, you know what, in order to get what I want, or in order to have this conflict end, I have to change my perspective, and I need to shift internally to be the person they need and want to be in order to get what they want. But that doesn't mean that they're just going to get what they want because they realize that they need to change a little bit. There usually is one more obstacle that they have to face, and that takes us into Act 3. So Act 3 is where the resolution and the climax comes. So this is where we start to see the character preparing for this resolution. This is where they are coming up with a plan. This is where they're gathering their allies. This is when they start to execute that plan. And so we realize that we're building towards that climactic scene where it is ultimately that resolution of them getting what they want. And we're starting to see now why that was so important to them. And we're getting resolution to that main conflict of the book. And then, of course, this is when we reach the finale. So this is wrapping up everything in a neat little bow, making sure there's no loose ends. There's also time for reflection from the character of sort of what is life like now that they've overcome these conflicts and obstacles and they've grown internally, and now how are they engaging with this new external world around them? So I'm sure if you look at this framework a little bit more, think about some of your favorite movies, you can start to see this reflected often. So what can be so interesting to look at the structure from a nonfiction standpoint is if you are writing a how-to or a memoir, you can follow some of the similar steps. So if you are writing a how-to book, for example, you are going to be sharing a lot about your own experience. So if you have a program or a method or a step-by-step approach that is going to help your reader achieve something in their life, so maybe you're trying to help them lose weight, or maybe go to the gym more, or achieve a really big goal in their life, this is where you've most likely done this, and that's why you were writing this book. So what can be so helpful is your Act 1 is essentially going to highlight their challenge and where their life is feeling stuck right now. So think of your Act 1 as that setup into, I've been there, this has been my experience, you're likely feeling XYZ and you're not satisfied. So again, you're setting them up so they can self-identify with what the problem is. There's a reason they picked up this book, because they know you've experienced it and you have a solution that can help them. So your Act 1 is really looking and leaning into those challenges that your reader is facing, and you are also setting the stage for yourself since you are now the one building the rapport. So you want to make sure that people have a good understanding of who you are. So another thing to think about as you are using the structure for nonfiction is to think about your reader as the main character. So your reader is ultimately the one that's looking for the change, is looking for the solution to the reason they picked up your book. So your act one, again, is setting them up to realize they are in the right place if they want the result you're offering. So your act two is definitely going to lean in and still be the meat of your book. This is where you're going to be developing and showing them the path forward. So if you have a step-by-step process, you have a proven program, this is where you're going to break down the steps to that program. And you're not only going to tell them the steps, but you're also going to share anecdotes and stories from your own life of like how you overcame each of these steps, why each step is important, and how it builds on the next one that you're going to share with them. So as you are sharing this, your reader, again, being your main character, is going to also start to realize that this is possible for them when they use your method. So this is them having that revelation of like, you know what? Now that I'm starting to see this being broken down into steps, this is something that I can do for myself. And your third act is also going to be a resolution and have this climax, because now you've set the rapport with the challenges that they're facing and why you are the person that's going to help them get through that challenge. You've presented how they're going to do that, the steps, and now you want to wrap up that resolution. This is where you might share how your life is now as a result of having gone through the challenges and done all of these steps. So what is life like now? What is your business like now? What is your body like now, depending on what goal you're taking people towards? Talk about how much your life is thriving as a result of following these steps. And then this might be also where you're inspiring the reader to do this for themselves. So that's the finale, is that you are showing them what the next step is to do now that they've read your book, and that you're reiterating that this is possible for them as well. And same if you're writing a memoir, this is very much so a structure that you can use as well, because you want to start again with what was your life like before the events you're going to share in the book were like. What were the conflicts? How are you feeling? Why do you think you started to experience what you were experiencing? You're going to share all of those experiences. And then the third act is going to be looking at, what did you learn from all of these experiences? What are your takeaways from these experiences? So again, the reader is going to understand what is that journey you went on and why you're telling the story. And they're going to see themselves within that, or be very inspired by your story. So the 3-act structure can be adapted for nonfiction, and it can be a great way to help you focus on the beginning, the middle, and the end, and that journey you're taking the reader on. Again, it really helps to position the reader as the main character so that you are constantly writing with them in mind and moving them towards the results you want at the end of the book. So I have the structure outlined on the blog at hernarrative.com, so feel free to check it out. The link is below. And while you're there, be sure to check out our Writing Resources Center, where there's a lot more writing tools to help you become the published author that you are dreaming about. And if you like this video, please like it, subscribe, and I will see you next time.